Hey guys, TrepChains here to talk about our pool zBarb today. I'm here with Kuller, who has been barbing with us for season 13 and 14. Hey Kuller.
Hey guys, how we doing?
So, for most people who watch me, you know I don't really play a zBarb very much, or particularly not a meta pool barb, and we're here to talk about the actual meta push barb today. So that's why Kuller's along with me to help out, because he's a brilliant barb. So first up, we just want to talk about a bit of play style for the barb. So you can see here, this is some footage taken from our Greater Rift 136 clear during season 14. And you can see here, Kuller is running around, pulling mobs out of the group, but also making sure he's back at that group regularly to be providing ignore pain. So you can see him dashing back in now. So ignore pain has about an 11-second uptime, so he needs to get out, pull mobs towards the group, and then make sure he's back generally within that 11 seconds, or almost all the time. Ignore pain has about, what'd you say, about a 50-yard radius, Kuller?
50-yard radius, yeah.
So generally, as long as he can see the party on screen, he's okay to hit that ignore pain. So in addition to his ignore pain, as I say, the main thing he's doing here is pulling. So that's using his Ancient Spear to pull mobs. He's using Rage Flip to make sure he has the best pull radius possible. So he's doing the scouting and pulling those mobs and then protecting the group with the ignore pain. In addition to that, there's a few other things he's trying to do to make sure he can keep pulling those mobs. That's a Fury cost skill. He's spamming Warcry and Threatening Shout, so they're helping him generate Fury. He pretty much hits them continuously. Kuller?
Yep. Yeah, no, you want to generate as much fury. You'll see it. If you overspam spear, you'll actually use it pretty quickly. So if you keep spamming them, you'll generate enough fury to be able to pull at will.
Cool. So, and in addition, there's a few other benefits. Threatening Shouts providing a damage buff for the group, and Warcry is providing some movement speed and toughness. So they're in there for some other reasons as well, but they're also helping get that Fury to be able to pull the mobs with the Ancient Sphere. Other couple of skills that he's using as he moves around here, pulling mobs back and forth, is Furious Charge, and that's the movement skill that you see. So one of the primary reasons we have it there is movement, but it also is able to stun mobs as he moves through them, because with Furious Charge, we'll look at the gear a little later on, but he's running, what's the set called for me, Kuller?
Raycors.
Raycors set, which has all runes of Furious Charge. So one of those runes allows those mobs to be frozen as he charges through them. Thank you very much for that. So the other skill that he has on his barb is Rend, and that's Mutilate. So that's just another group buff for damage. So he'll just be hitting that. He only needs to hit that when he's, you know, near the mobs that are in the group that are being hurt. Okay. The other thing he's, I guess, doing is he is actually selecting these setup points. When he ran in here a lot earlier, you would have seen he placed a flag. So it's his job to kind of direct the group. He's our leader, hey Kuller?
I try to.
Try to lead the group. Okay, so I think that's most of the skills. So really, quick recap. As close to possible as 100% uptime on IP, and I think the important thing is here, like sometimes you do have to run further away than would let you get back within that 11 seconds just to pull something important, like when you're setting up for a condi, you might have to go a long way. If that does have to happen, communication is key. So Kuller's really good at this. He will tell us IP is going to be down for a few seconds, guys. Like that's a pretty standard message. If you watch our clears, you'll hear that. Communication is really important as a barb, and yeah, also just telling us when to move and the like. The other thing the barb's really doing during this rift is Pylon Management. So I'll try and talk about this quickly. Obviously maps like this one are pretty great maps, but it is the Barb's job to really look at the map, explore the map, but consider try and know the maps to have an idea where pylons normally would spawn, where they're expected to spawn. And this is important because when we want to conduit like this, we want to have built up elites and the like. So if we want a pylon to spawn on a map, so let's say we've got a few elites or we're on a good map and we want a pylon to spawn, if we know where those pylon spots are, then basically the Barb could choose not to explore the pylon spots, so that they could potentially spawn later, as long as we've got enough trash and the like. But if we're on a map, a bad map, for example, or we don't have many elites and we don't want a pylon spawning at the end of the map, what the Barb would do is early on the Barb would explore those spots, yeah, Kuller?
Yep.
And to make sure that the pylon, or doesn't make sure, there's always chance involved, but to try and reduce the chance, if you explore it earlier, reduce the chance of a pylon having spawned in a spot we don't want one. So basically with those pylon spawns, I think I've mostly explained it, but the progression increases our chance of pylon spawn. So there's some people who've thrown around numbers, but we don't technically know exactly how much. But basically all the progress we get increases that chance of the pylon spawn. So we know we've got a pretty high chance at that 30 to 35% range, but it's never guaranteed. It's always a chance of a pylon spawn, but knowing where those pylon spots are and either not exploring them if we think we might get one and really want one until we've reached, you know, a sufficient amount of progression that we think we've got a high chance of a pylon spawn, or exploring them early is important. If we've explored a pylon spot where we want one and we didn't get one, we also just need to make sure that we get ourselves a little bit more rift progression before we explore the next spot. Yeah, Kuller?
Yeah. Normally you're looking between 1–1.5%, and then you're free to look at the next spot.
Okay, so cool. So I think that's most of the during the rift important points. Anything else to add to that one, Kuller?
You can sort of see in the previous map on this one, we explored the whole map, then we had a lot of progress, and then we went to the next map. We had enough progress in this particular run that we were more likely when we entered to get a pylon. And that's just an example of the way we managed it, at least on this map anyway.
Yeah, that's also why you would have seen that we left those purple globes back at the conduit pylon with our Necromancer, so that hopefully we could get that early pylon and then use the globes as progression towards a chance of yet another pylon. That's the other thing I didn't mention with the pylon spawns and the pylon management, that the progression count towards chance of the next pylon seems to start when we spawn the previous pylon, so that's why we did that with the globes. Isn't that right, Kuller?
Yep, correct.
Okay, so moving on to the boss fight now, which we're conveniently on. Great timing. Important things for the Barb playstyle on this boss. Number one, big one, we do not want to DR the boss. We don't want to put any CC on the boss that could affect our Necromancer. So number one rule, do not Furious Charge the boss. So you've been Furious Charging around the rift, moving nice and fast. When you're on the boss, do not Furious Charge. Is that okay for number one rule, Kuller?
Yep, that's the big one.
Okay. So what you can do on the boss, the other thing we'll talk about with gearing, but because of that DR rule, and this goes for all characters really, but particularly our supports, because if our DPS, they could just not touch the boss. Definitely try not to have any CC on your weapons, right? So weapons or any other pieces. There are some other pieces that can get them. Can get a CC effect like chance to freeze on hit would be one example. You don't want any of those on your weapons or anything. If you have those, you can basically have to not touch the boss, which isn't great. So assuming you've got none of that on your weapons or gear, then what you can do noting you're not furiously charging the boss. You can still spam Threatening Shout Falter. You can still spam Warcry, so you're getting those buffs from those. You can still rend the boss. So rend is got that mutilate rune, so that's an increased damage buff, which is fantastic for your Necromancer. And you can still use your Spear, Rage Flip to help procure Obsidian Ring, which will help keep your cooldowns down so that you do also keep IP up. You're trying to keep IP up 100% of the time still on that boss. I think that's pretty much it for the boss. Anything to add, Kuller?
If you want to be close in on particular Rift Guardians, yeah, probably prefer to use Rend. I use it because I'm a little bit lazy. You can just sit next to the boss. You're pretty safe in Sank. You won't take enough damage to die. And you will actually be a little bit weaker because you're not Furious Charging. You lose that buff from Band of Might. In the case that it's too much for you, or you need to move the Rift Guardian a little bit, you can actually stand back and use Ancient Spear, and you can move the boss a little bit. Sort of only use that in certain times.
Yeah, and there will be obviously some bosses where we have to use some specific things, like some bosses we need to stun them to avoid ads, but we're not going to go into that level of detail right now anyway. So they're just general rules for a pretty standard boss. Okay, well, what I'm going to do now is I'm going to move on to the gear and skill check very shortly. Okay, so I now have my barb here to have a quick look at the items. Note these aren't particularly great items, they're just items I put together to demonstrate this build. So just going to look over what we should be rolling. So first up, we're wearing this Raycor's 4-piece set, and this is important because of those Furious Charge buffs. So Furious Charge, if I only hit one enemy, it gets a charge back, which is useful when I'm darting around the Grift. But also importantly, Furious Charge gains the effect of every rune. So there was some great stuff there where we stun mobs with the cold rune, and we get a charge back. We can hit, if we're hitting 3+ enemies, we basically get 2 seconds cooldown off each enemy we hit. So if we're hitting 3+ enemies, as long as we have enough cooldown, which is above about 63% total, we basically get that charge free as well. So yeah, so that's really helpful for us. Stats on the gear. So our chest and our pants, we're really looking for survivability. So you can see on this, strength, fit, and resist all. Ideally, we'd have similar in the pants. Strength, fit, resist all would be ideal on both of these two for survivability. But otherwise, other defensive stats you can get. So you can see here, I've got armor and some secondary resist on those. On the shoulders, we're really looking for cooldown, so we want to hit that around that 63% cooldown point. So wherever we can get cooldown, we are trying to get it, including the shoulders. So we want cooldown here, all resistance if we can get it, and then other defensive stats. So you can see here I've got some strength and life on these ones. Our gloves, again, we really want cooldown here, quite important. If we can get it as well, attack speed is helpful. And we'll see some attack speed on later pieces as well. Importantly, attack speed helps our Furious Charge. We can Furious Charge faster and therefore move around the Grift faster. Other stats we'd want on here, all resist if we can get it. Resource cost reduction can also help with our Ancient Spear that we're pulling things with, cost resource. That can be helpful, but otherwise other defensive stats on that one. So that's our 4-piece Raycors that we're wearing. So now we're going to move on to support and legendaries. Leoric's Crown. We really want a high orange stat on this. We want a lot of cooldown, so closer to the 100% the better. I wouldn't ever recommend wearing anything unless you're really early in a season with less than 95, but aim for that 100 or very high up if you can. Really on here you want defensive stats. So you can see here I've got intelligence, vitality, and % life, but other defensive stats like all resist and the like are fine as well. Pride of Cassius. So on this one, orange stat is super important. You can either wear this or have it in the cube. In the cube right now I have Chilinix Chain. So if your Chilinix Chain is rolled better, wear that. If the Pride of Cassius is rolled better, you can see here I'm just got this primal. Wear the Pride of Cassius. So, but if you are wearing Pride of Cassius, you really need that 6 seconds of Ignore Pain. If it's in the cube, you get the 6 seconds automatically. Apart from that, you want defensive stats on here. So strength, fit, resist all is great. You probably don't want that life per fury spent that I have there on this one. You'd want something like a % life roll or armor or something defensive there as well. Okay, illusory boots. On these, you really just want defensive skills. So you can see on here, these have rolled pretty well for the build. I've got intelligence, vitality, resist all, and life regen. Again, other stats, be it strength or armor and the like, are great on those as well. But these are there so that you're just not getting blocked for anything apart from walls. Which is why we have, I'll quickly mention, the potion we're running here is the Kool-Aid potion. That's important because wallers are something that can block the pull barb. So if you get yourself a bit hurt, you can pop a potion and run through those walls. Deviated there. Okay, Nemesis Bracers. I haven't rolled these because I don't want to ruin my primal just to show a build. But on these as well, you're wearing your Nemesis Bracers, so you are the one who's hitting the pylons and popping those extra elites out. But the skills, the stats you want on there are defensive stats. So you can see here, these are dexterity. I found them on the dex classes I normally run. So dexterity, strength, intelligence doesn't matter too much. Vitality, resist all is great. And then some kind of other defensive stat would be ideal on those. Okay, moving up to our jewelry now. Amulet, ideally running some kind of immunity amulet. You can see here I'm running a fire one. Fire is generally considered a pretty strong one, but arcane immunity or some other immunity would be fine as well. On this, you definitely want cooldown. Once again, cooldown is really important to be able to keep your ignore pain up during the rift. So cooldown and some defensive skills. So you can see on this I've just got dex and vit, but any kind of defensive skills will work for you there. Oculus ring. Important on this, again, cooldown. Really want 8% cooldown if you can get it, or as high as possible. Your orange stat's pretty important for this. It really helps your DPS if they're standing in those occurrents to have max, so as close to 85% as you can get is great. And then other defensive stats of some kind. See here I've just got some resist to all and regen. It's actually from my Z monk. You can see their health globes as well. Beautiful for a Z monk, not for a Z bar. Obsidian ring. Okay, so obsidian ring comes with standard rolls. When you get your obsidian ring, you want to roll off the crit hit chance. Crit hit chance is not doing anything for you. In order of priority of the other stats for what you want maximum, cooldown is most important. So wanting that cooldown as close to 8% as possible. Followed by our attack speed. Next important, remembering that it helps our movement skill, helps us move around faster, and then resource cost reduction, helping our pull skill, helping that cost less resource. So in that order of the priority of those other stats on there. Okay, that's all of our jewelry. Moving on to our weapons. So weapons, wearing Slanderer and Little Rogue. So the set here gives us attack speed bonuses and a bit of toughness. Ideally, we want both of these weapons rolled with cooldown. Again, making sure, if possible, we hit that 63% to help keep our ignore pain up. Attack speed, once again, for help with our movement skill. And vitality, if we can get it, or some other kind of defensive stats on that. And same deal over here at my Little Rogue. So again, cooldown, attack speed's great, and then some kind of defensive stat like the vitality I have here. I personally don't recommend trying to roll off your damage roll, even though technically it's better for you, because it can take a very long time and a very, very large amount of gold to get the rolls that you're after. Okay, so I'm going to look at the cube quickly now, and I am going to bring it up here, and I understand you won't be able to see it because of my icon. So I'm also going to bring it up here. So starting with our jewelry, we've got the Band of Might there in our jewelry slot. Now this is really, really important for the zBarb survivability. If we're casting our Furious Charge, which we're casting nice and often, well, that's how we're moving around, we've got this 80% damage reduction. It's pretty critical. So don't stand there and don't Furious Charge, because if you don't Furious Charge for over 8 seconds, you're going to be taking a lot more damage and you are at risk of dying. So keep in mind as you're running through that rift, you've got to keep your Band of Might bonus up. Our Chuniac's Chain here is about movement speed. So when we're hitting our war cry, that is movement speed, and it is a whole party buff. As I said before, you can wear this if you like instead of your Pride of Cassius, just whichever is rolled best wear it, put the other one in the cube. Now the weapon slot for the cube, you can see here I have on and Kuller has on Wall of Man. So Wall of Man is basically a bit of toughness when you're hit, but Kuller, over to you to say there's actually a lot of options that you could use in this slot.
The weapon slot is very flexible. Could literally run nothing, but you might as well use it because it's there. Other options are Injum, in particular for speeds. It'll help you reset your cooldowns. Burning Axe of Senkus is another damage toughness. You can even run Vigilance as well for a little bit of extra sank, but sometimes that can be a little bit confusing for the group.
Okay, great, thank you. Okay, so I think that covers off most of our gear and our cube. I will just quickly talk through the legendary gems. So we are wearing Gogok of Swiftness here, so that's about improving our cooldown, which is going to help us keep IP up. Ignore Pain, essential for our group survivability. Gem of Toxin, so that is a damage boost for anything we hit with it, but it's also an aggro. So if we hit things with Toxin, they like to follow us, and that helps us when we're trying to pull stuff, so some stuff will just start following because of that Toxin. It makes it easier for us to pull stuff as we move around the rift as well. Now, this gem, Wreath of Lightning, is what Kuller's using. He's a pretty experienced barb. It gives him some extra move speed, and if it procs those little lightning things that come out from the Barbarian, those are also applying that Toxin, which is going to help pull stuff, because again, if Toxin gets applied, it gets the damage buff against it, but it's also going to follow a lot better, so it helps the Barb pull in mobs. If you're new to the zBarb, it is recommended that you consider dropping out that Wreath of Lightning and using Esoteric Alteration for a heap more survivability. So just keep that in mind. This is great when you're an experienced barb, but if you're new, perhaps run Esoteric initially until you're used to it, making sure you're keeping up that cube buff of the Band of Might, then you can perhaps move on to this Wreath of Lightning. Okay. Other things you can see there, the other gems we're running. So obviously a cooldown gem in the helm. I'm running Resist All, I hope that's correct, Kuller, in my armor for survivability. And I'm running life per hit gems in my weapons. Again, I'm hoping that's correct, but Kuller can correct me if I'm wrong there. Cool. Okay, quick look at our Paragon now. So for both the zBarb and if you're running a zMonk, this is important as well. Make sure you do not put any points in area damage. Area damage, you're not doing much damage, you don't contribute to area damage, it only helps lag the game, you don't want to do that, so make sure you're running with 0 points in area damage. Everything else there, in utility, defensive and offensive, you can basically put all the points in. Obviously in offensive here, if you don't have many points yet, you're definitely prioritizing cooldown reduction first, attack speed next, and critical hit chance and damage don't really matter, so whatever after that. Defensive, you're probably, I would say, correct me if I'm wrong, prioritizing resist all first, followed by life percent, followed by armor, followed by life regen. Utility, apart from those others, I'm going to guess resource cost reduction first, but I could be wrong with life per hit. Either way, those two are your first two anyway. Gold find, well, not too important. Okay, over in core, we want points into maximum fury, points into movement speed, important unless you have some movement speed roll on your boots or something that you can reduce this. But then you want most of your points in vitality, but if you don't have enough or don't have a significant amount of armor, and I think the value we just talked about was around 16,000 armor, is a good value to run. You might want to put some points into strength here just to boost your armor up to that, about that 16,000 amount. So you can see here I've put some points into the strength for the armor, and then a bunch more points into vitality. Okay, So I think that's most of what we're running apart from the skills. We did talk a bit about the skills in the gameplay, but we're going to have a look at the skill screen now and make sure we've gone through that properly. So, Rend Mutilate. So we were running that basically for a damage buff, correct?
Mm-hmm.
So you can see here, this chills enemies and they take 10% increased damage from all sources. So if the barb, and you only hit this like when you're near the group, so the enemies near the group, they're the ones getting damaged. They're going to take 10% increased damage from your DPS characters, so that's great. Ancient Spear, Rage Flip, this is your pulling, right? So it's how you pull, and Rage Flip we were using as it was pretty much the best range pull. Ignore Pain Mob Rule, this is giving your whole team, as long as you hit it when you're in that within that 50-yard radius of them, a nice buff to their survivability. So it lasts for about 11 seconds once you include the 6 seconds on the belt. So you see here it says 5 seconds, but we've got 6 seconds extra on our belt. So 11 seconds, so that's why you would have seen Kuller dashing back and forth to the group to try and keep up this buff as much as possible. Threatening Shout, we're running Falter Rune on that. So this is giving us a damage buff. So you can see there the enemies take 25% increased damage for 6 seconds. So that's a nice damage boost for our party. Furious Charge, Furious Charge, it doesn't matter what rune. So I've just clicked one here because it sounded good, right? But Furious Charge, you are getting all runes from Raidfor's set. So you don't actually have to even pick a rune if you don't like. Just note you get all of these things. So we'll have a quick look at them. Battering Ram doesn't matter to you, you're not doing damage. Merciless Assault does matter to you, so this is our recharge time is reduced by 2 seconds for every enemy hit. So as I said earlier, as long as you're charging through at least 3 enemies and you have that 63% plus cooldown, that's going to basically not cost you a charge because of that reset. Stamina, you're getting some additional fury, yay. Cold, this is the DR, so if you're charging through mobs that are running, the barb can freeze them with this, which can help the survivability of the others running around. And Furious Charge here just allows us to store up to 3 charges of Furious Charge, so it gives us that, you know, extra charge there. So we get all of those runes thanks to running Raid Cores, which is why we're running Raid Cores. Okay. Warcry, Veterans Warning, so Warcry was giving us this extra dodge chance and other survivability. Anything else on Warcry, Kuller?
Yeah, and that extra movement speed as well.
Extra movement speed, right, because that links with our belt, Chill Niak's chain, right? In the cube. Or if we wear it. Cool. So it also gives us movement speed. Okay, some passive skills here. Inspiring Presence. So this is when we're threatening Shout and our Warcry. Both our Threatening Shout and our Warcry are doubled in duration. Awesome. And there's also some extra life bonus there to our party. Pound of Flesh, we're getting some movement speed. That's the main thing, yeah? Cool. Nerves of Steel, this is a cheat death. Cheat deaths are really important in push builds because sometimes we accidentally let that Band of Might drop, yeah?
You will occasionally get one shot if you push high enough, yes.
Yes, okay. Superstition, it gives you a bit more survivability. You can see that's a non-physical damage reduction, but it also allows a bit of fury regen as well. So that's why you're wearing that. So I think that covers the skills. Anything I've missed there in the skills, Kuller?
No, it's all pretty good.
Fantastic. Anything I've missed in the general build guide?
No, all good.
All good? Okay. Thank you very much, Kuller, for joining me tonight to explain the zBarb for the pushers. And thank you everyone for watching. GG.
GG.